Hello, my 365 world. It seems like so long ago that I was here because I haven't been broadcasting over Christmas. I know I've done some personal ones, but I am now back on track to deliver more value for everyone. And at the end of last year, we got to, I put the wrong number up. That's typical, isn't it? I put number 3, and we are, in actual fact, on number 4. Yeah, now I've got to write 4 backwards. 4, okay. All right, so hello again, my 365 world. I am so excited to be back doing this again, because this fulfills one of my, well, actually probably more than one of my human needs, which is the one to be needed. Is probably the biggest one. That's what a lot of people who are stars, who really like to be out there in front of people, and also a lot of therapists, they love to be needed and they love to be out there. So hello Lisa, hello Julian. Now, at the end of last year, I was going through the 5 R's of cellular healing. And these are really important concepts to get. And if you've watched the other 3, then you probably already know more about cells, cell membranes, and how genetics is actually intertwined with what we do than probably your medical doctor. And probably any of the therapists that you may or may not be going to if you have health problems. You can't hear me. Okay, all right. Oh, okay, so it wasn't me. That's good. So, R1, 2, and 3 we've already covered. And if you haven't seen those, I will try and dig out the links and put them in the comments here later for you. So R4, reduce. Reduce what? Reduce inflammation. Now, your cell membranes, for those of you that this is the first time watching this, your cell membranes are made of cholesterol, which is absolutely vitally important to everybody and every single cell in your body. And your cell membrane is the junction between the nucleus, where all your DNA is, and the outside world and the environment. And the cell membrane protects the DNA, but it also is the thing that allows the things in or out that should or shouldn't be going in or out. It's really the communication pathway. In fact, the cell membrane is actually the brain. The cell nucleus is nothing more than a repository of knowledge. It's a library. The cell nucleus is not the brain. The DNA by itself is not the brain. It does not direct what's happening on the outside. It's just the knowledge, and the information that the cell nucleus gets will then depend on the output. So and it's all to do with the cell membrane. So the cell membranes are absolutely vital. And if the cell membrane is inflamed for whatever reason, when we're going to go through the 3 major ones in a minute, if the cell membrane is inflamed, then a number of things don't happen. Okay, first of all, there's a communication breakdown. And so in magnificent 7 terms, that's talk right. Your internal talk, your internal communication is not happening. So this is one of the main reasons for a lot of autoimmune disorders, whether you're talking thyroid problems or vitiligo or a whole host of others. It's because the internal cellular communication is kablooey. It's kablooey. So you need, and one of the major reasons for that is inflammation of the cell membrane. It breaks down the communication. And then what happens? Well, if the membrane is faulty, not only does it not let things in, it doesn't let things out, including the breakdown products of all the cellular mechanisms. And that's basically exhaust fumes. Now imagine if you're in a car and you wedge a potato in the exhaust fumes are going to back up and find other ways out, maybe into the car itself. And your cell membrane has basically lots of chimneys that let all the toxic fumes out of the cell, and then there are lots of other pathways that then get rid of the toxins. So if your cell membrane's damaged, you can actually have a build-up of toxins inside every single cell that is damaged, which is not good news. It's poisoning yourself with your own exhaust fumes. So you don't even have to be ingesting toxins. This is autotoxicity. I'm not dropping off because thank you, Simon. That's the way. I don't think I see when people drop off anyway. So anyway, so we've got toxicity, and then so you've got communication problems, you've got auto intoxication, and then this leads to poor genetic expression, because your genes don't just express themselves willy-nilly. They have to be given the right information, and when the right information isn't happening, that's when genes go wrong. And this is when things like, well, what's related to cancer? Things like what's related to the inflammation? Cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, even obesity, heart disease. Just about every single chronic condition is now in some way being related to inflammation. And we're now understanding by looking at cellular membranes why this is so, because cell membranes, if they're inflamed, bad shit will happen somewhere, depending on what your genes are programmed to do in a state of crisis, because that's what most of these chronic health conditions are. They're your genes adapting to the environment with the information they have to best survive. And if they're getting the right, like if you're getting the wrong information about everything, like if you're sitting inside, okay, on a really hot sunny day, but your thermostat is getting the information that it's -12, it's going to crank everything up to 50 degrees all the time, and you're going to sweat and you're going to dehydrate and you're going to be wondering why you're drinking water all the time. Yet if it is freezing cold outside, it's going to crank up and you're going to feel fine. But of course, with your membranes, it's much, much, much harder. Right, Brooke now just said good evening on you. Hi, Philip. So it's really, really important that your cell membranes are super fixed so your genes can do what they're meant to do, but they can do it with the right inflammation. So what are the three major causes of inflammation? Well, first of all, you've got to get glucose and insulin under control. For those of you with diabetes who already know a little bit about diabetes, you'll know what insulin is. And insulin is, yeah, you need it. It's made from cholesterol, by the way, like so many other hormones in your body. But when insulin levels go high, insulin is actually pro-inflammatory. It has a number of detrimental effects as long as good effects. And the more your cells become resistant to insulin, because, for instance, one reason they become resistant to insulin is because they're inflamed, so that the insulin, there's no receptors for insulin on the cell anymore, so you need to make 10 times as much insulin to get the cell to do the thing to suck the glucose on the inside. But while this cell may be inflamed, another cell may be normal, and insulin is setting off inflammatory chemicals and reactions elsewhere. But insulin and glucose, if they go out of control, this is why they cause so many different problems. And did you know that most people who have diabetes don't die from the diabetes? They actually die from other inflammatory conditions. I think 68%, something like that. 68% have Alzheimer's. I shall just look it up. You can still hear me. What is it? Alzheimer's. I did have it written down. Okay, all right. So 68% of diabetics die from heart disease, and 50% of Alzheimer's, 50% of diabetes patients usually end up with Alzheimer's or dementia, and that's because of inflammation. They now think that Alzheimer's is actually diabetes of the brain. It's certainly inflammation related and sugar related. So you need to get your sugar under control. And how do you get your sugar under control? To stop putting it in your mouth. You know the number one number one thing that's increasing most people's sugar, it's not actually sugar and diet drink, or not diet drinks and fizzy drinks. The number one is actually grains. 2 pieces of wholemeal bread contain the same amount of sugar as a can of Coke, basically. It's huge, and people, so many diabetics are told to have complex carbohydrates, and they're told to have, you know, wholemeal bread and whole wheat pasta and things like this. But you may as well just tell them to have Coke. Yes, the sugar will be released more slowly, but it's still sugar, and a lot of it. So all those things need to be massively decreased. Anything that's sugar, carbohydrate needs to be decreased in nearly everybody. Spelt and quinoa. It varies. Quinoa is a really good source of proteins as well. There's a lot more other stuff in it. It depends. There are different ways to checking to see how bad things are for you, but they're not as bad as wheat, which is the number one. Now, what's the next one on the list? Bad. Yes, I did manage to write backwards. Did you know how difficult that was to write backwards? Bad. Because I've got to write the B like the D and the D like the B, and then dyslexia hits in as well. So, but I got it right first time. So bad fats are another major cause of inflammation. Now, the bad fats are not necessarily the ones you think they are, but bad fats are rife. And the good news is when you get rid of sort of wheaty, grainy products, you're also probably going to get rid of a lot of bad fats, because they're in things like biscuits, and they're hydrogenated fats or trans fats. Those are the really bad ones. You don't have to worry so much about saturated fats, monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats. You just, if it's got a trans fat or hydrogenated fats in, just get rid of the whole food, because it's probably going to be completely useless for you. Now, the other thing, Sandra Holland, gluten-free bread worse. I'm celiac, but I don't eat much bread. That's good. Yeah, just avoid wheat in general. With celiacs, sometimes it's not actually even the gluten that's the problem. It's the fact that gluten has got, it's just the wheat and the other things have got glyphosate in. Glyphosate rips holes in your intestine, and it makes gluten about 10 to 100 times more toxic. So that's why a lot of celiacs are reacting to things that don't even have gluten in, because it's actually the glyphosates. So there you go. You need a glass panel rather than a whiteboard. Do I really? Is that because of the reflection, Kate? So, yes, possibly. Where was I? Yeah, bad fats. So bad fats, trans fats, look for anything that's got trans and hydrogenated fats in and remove it. And the other thing is fats from animals that have not been fed the food they would naturally have, which is pretty much most of the meat and fish that are available in the supermarket, and cheese as well, is because what's glyphosates in? Sandra, Google glyphosates UK cancer or glyphosate ban Europe. Glyphosate is on anything with wheat, basically. Even organically grown stuff has lots of glyphosate. Don't ask me how. Probably not organic, that's why. So anything with wheat is going to have glyphosates. But it gets into our food supply and lots of other areas as well, because glyphosate stuff is in a lot of the animals that we eat. So animal fats are full of all kinds of bad rubbish because they're fed the wrong foods to begin with, like glyphosate food. So when it comes to animal fats, you want to make sure that they've been grass-fed for beef, for instance. You want to make sure that the fish you're eating is cleaned and purified and it's not farmed, because it's then fed on stuff that it wouldn't naturally eat, so it won't have the right fats inside it. So basically just, you know, most animal fats these days are pretty bad for us unless you know exactly where they're coming from. And even when it comes to, and the other really bad source of fats are the things like the sunflower oils or the vegetable oils that we've been told to use for cooking over something like lard. Because even though what I've just said about animal fats, and most lard is going to be made from commercially reared animals, lard is going to be better for you than the sunflower oil and the rapeseed oil that you're getting off the supermarket shelf. Probably by about a factor of 10, because the oils that we should be cooking with should be solid at room temperature. Lard and butter. Get butter from grass-fed cows. Anchor butter. If Anchor do a lard, it's probably going to be grass-fed, so that's probably quite good for you as well. So you want to avoid those sunflower seeds. You'll have to look it up. I don't tend to eat many sunflower seeds, but they probably shouldn't have glyphosates on, but you'll have to check. Okay, so those are the two big things, glucose and bad fats. And the third one, which is the thing that is so often neglected, but is the poop right phase, so number 7 on my list, the poop right of the Magnificent Seven is toxins. And we're getting toxins like glyphosates from so many different areas. We're breathing them in, we're drinking them in all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of hormone disruptors that just disrupt the cell membranes, and the toxins attack and they break down the cell membrane, and so you get, toxins on the inside, toxins on the outside, and you get a really sick, horrible cell. So which is why it's so important to not just eat clean food, but to do things that help your body remove toxins at all times. Okay, what about coconut oil? That's become a really good health kick at the moment. Well, I recommend that you get your coconut oil from a really reputable source. And I happen to know this guy called Pete Cohen, and he has sourced an amazingly good, pure, clean source of coconut oil. And that's what I love cooking with. I tend not to fry very much food very deeply. Things like sesame oil and groundnut oil are better for the higher temperatures. So, for instance, when you're cooking Chinese food, look at what the Chinese oils are used. Okay, they don't use olive oil for high fat frying. Olive oil is, depending on the food you're using, look at the oils that culture will use for those temperatures. So olive oil is good for lots of different things. Coconut oil is great for lots of different things. So there you go. It seems like it's impossible to not take in toxins. It is impossible, yes. Well, that's why we have a liver and kidneys and things, because we're always making toxins. Toxins are always coming in, but there's just more now than there ever was before. So you just got to eat as cleanly as you can, and you've got to do things that just help remove them all the time. Dr. Bob Rakowski is a big fan of detoxing at least once or twice a year, as well as eating healthily all the time. And he does minor detox at least once or twice a week by having detoxifying nutrients. I'm the same. I'm continuously looking ways to get rid of more toxins from my body. Quite obsessed with it, really, and to some degree. But not so much that I don't know how to enjoy myself. Same with Dr. Bob. You've got to play, you've got to enjoy yourselves. You can't get too hung up everything. You've got to take detoxing seriously, but not so seriously that you forget to enjoy your life. Okay? I think that's it. I bought coconut oil, but not sure how to use it. Lisa, the easiest way to use coconut oil is to just eat it. I love making omelettes using coconut oil. But I just do. A lot of people love putting coconut oil in their coffee. I don't, but a lot of people do. You can use coconut oil in cakes. You can add it to so many different things. Yeah, just use it instead of cooking. Just add it at the end, basically. There are lots of ways. Yes, Jen Reddings, there are lots of ways. And good old Google. Good old Google does have a lot of information. Okay, I think I've taken up enough of your time now. I now have to go and finish up in the clinic. And it's my wife's birthday today as well. So I'd better get home and start pampering her a bit more, because I've been pampering her remotely at the moment. Okay. Hello, Tom. And, what's that last thing? Saw coconut sugar tonight. Right. Coconut sugar. Yeah, I thought it would be a good idea as well, but it's still sugar. It's still sugar. It tastes a little bit of coconut sugar. I think tastes really nice in coffee, but it's still sugar. So yeah, not so good. Okay, all right then. Bye for now. Thank you, Lisa. I'll tell Mrs. Chris. Okay, and thank you, Julian.